Good morning, everyone. I hope you guys are having another wonderful morning. Fuck it, I'm not gonna edit that out. But yeah, I'm gonna be doing the finale to my collecting days. And I know I originally at one point said this is gonna be like a 5-part series, but I was recording part 4 and I felt like what I originally was gonna talk about, I just ended up talking about in my other videos. And I don't want to do 5 episodes on this when I don't have to. So I think we're just gonna do the finale right here, right now. So I'm not gonna already say I'm not gonna refresh you guys. I assume you know at this point what was going on, what I was collecting, my whole thing behind it, right? So intro out of the way. So at this point in my life, once I graduated, I had my own place and I still had my little collections going on. But by the time I was 18, a lot of what inspired me as a collector was just kind of dying down a little bit, right? I remember all these shelves and stuff, once I had a roommate, once I had a girlfriend, once I was living in a small little place, and I was just dragging the shit around at this point, going from house to house. A lot of the time, a lot of the stuff, it was just in boxes. It was just sitting around. And a lot of it I had to start trimming. And eventually, I was talking about those things, those books and VHS tapes I was collecting out of the trash, literally. That was the first stuff to get trimmed. The VHS tapes, they just kind of had to go because they took up way too much space. And I didn't have the desire to have them around anymore, really. And I didn't even have a VHS player at this point, so I was like, why do I even have these? So I remember, I think I donated to Goodwill a lot of this stuff. I remember I started selling a couple things that were worth money. I remember I had a couple of games that were worth money and I wasn't interested in them, so I was like, I'm just gonna take the plunge and sell these. Whereas first, if I had a valuable game, even though I was dead broke, it was just gonna sit on my shelf and be a proud little trophy. But, if I don't have any, at first it started to be things that don't have any sentimental value, and I know it's never going to have sentimental value. In my head at first it was some of the stuff down the line I could eventually play, eventually watch. But it started to become, I don't think I'm ever gonna play these things. So those were the first things I got rid of. And we're gonna talk about this probably in future episodes, but at one point I didn't have anywhere to live. I was kind of just sleeping in my car and I was just kind of staying at my mom's house when I could, but I had to work at 7 in the morning and she lived an hour plus away. So getting to work was always a problem. So sometimes I just slept in my car. I would try to sleep at my friend's house, but they never seemed to want me there. And it quickly became oh, I can't sleep at my friend's house. So that was no longer an option. I stayed at my mom's neighbor. She heard I was sleeping in my car and she was like, oh, you can stay here. So I remember staying, I didn't want to stay there, but this has nothing to do with this. That's gonna be a future episode. But once you're at sleeping in your car territory, your collection suddenly isn't important anymore. And I know I was still flipping shit on eBay at this point, and just little things were getting trimmed. And I remember a lot of the collectors I watched on YouTube, they were trimming their collections. So at that point it was almost just damn, the fire that started this is literally the fire that started this is going out. So I just started trimming and trimming, and at one point I thought, okay, maybe the stuff, once I complete a game, maybe I'll sell that game. So I remember at this point I'm doing YouTube, right? So I remember once I beat XCOM, I sold it. And I told myself, once I have a review done for the game or the movie or whatever it is, I'm never going to come back to it. Like, once I watch this movie, I, like, obviously I'll watch it again if other people are interested and just, like, whatever. But, like, that part of me that, like, is, like, and I still, this is a rule I still have. Like, when I finish something now, I'm going to try to get rid of it. Like, oh, I just played Uncharted 4. I'm going to try to get rid of that. And I know I recently, like, just went to Game Giant and I had a bunch of old games lying around, and I just traded it in for games that I think I'll actually play. And, you know, that was such a good feeling. Most of the games, like 90% of the games I have are games I'm planning to eventually play. That, or I'm like waiting for them to like rise in price or whatever. So, and that's the same for my movies. Like, eventually, like, it's very hard for me to watch DVDs now because, like, my girlfriend's not interested for whatever reason in picking those things up off the shelf. Like, I don't know why. Like, I guess that's just an intimidating idea rather than just turning on Netflix. But I do eventually, like, if anything, my DVD collection is the one thing that's still, like, this huge storage problem. I still have a giant shelf in my living room full of movies. There's a couple comics on there. There's a couple video games, and I have a couple like smaller little like those shelves you see at GameStop. I have a couple of those, and those are what my games are on. And that's kind of like the final form of my collecting. I just started trimming and trimming, and now the only things I have are either like super sentimental or things I like plan to play and get rid of. And I'm not really like, I'll buy video games now, but it's now for the sake of actually playing them. And I do want to kind of collect, like I want to buy vinyl, vinyl can actually be like a decoration in your house. Like, I plan to eventually like have a wall full of vinyl, but that's like a decoration as much as it is like a collection. But with games nowadays, or like even just collecting, like I'm not collecting to buy anymore. Like back then I was buying, like I would go to GameStop with my like $5 that I've like scrounged up, and I would buy whatever random PS2 game that I probably wouldn't even like, but I was gonna try it anyway. But that's not the case anymore. If I'm buying a game, it's because I'm interested in it and I want to play it, and I want to sell it once I'm done. Because at this point in my life, like money, like back then, money, like it wasn't this real thing. It was like you know how it is when you're a kid. Like if you obtain money, it's to be spent. I obviously should have saved that money. A lot of the stuff, like I don't want to say it was a waste buying it. I know a lot of these things I made money reselling eventually. I flipped a lot of it on eBay. And a lot of it, like, you know, I bought it for like $1 and I sold it for like 50 cents. So that's not like an actual big loss or anything. And stuff like that. And so that's kind of the final fate. And some of it I'll buy for 25 cents and sell it for 50 cents. So 25 cents profit. So yeah, that's kind of the final fate of my collection. I still have, you know, my books that I plan on reading. And I, for some reason, can't get rid of, like, the books from my childhood. I can't get rid of, like, the games from my childhood. I still have a closet with VHS tapes that I can't get rid of. And that part of me is still alive somewhere, but I eventually, like, when I started YouTube, I wanted to be that collector. I wanted to be the guy who's like, here's all the stuff I bought recently and I added to the collection. But I'm just not that guy anymore. And if I'm ever a millionaire, like that's gonna be one of the first things I start up again. Like, I'm gonna buy a house. I'm going to immediately fill it with like a bunch of collections, and I'm gonna dick around for a bunch of years just chilling on my collections. That is like one of my dreams if I ever win the lottery. But until that day happens, which it never will, I'm kind of in this form where I don't have the room or the money for this stuff. And even though if I really wanted to, I could hustle and still collect. I still could be that guy who like pulls shit off the shelf and experiences it and then talks about it. But what I talk about like now has to be profitable for YouTube. And no one watches old movie reviews. And even though I still like kind of do that, like part of me knows I shouldn't do that. And so that drive is gone. That passion is like still there. Like it's alive, but it's not what it used to be. So that's kind of the fate of this hard work that I put in for all these years. And it's kind of sad, but at the same time, like there's nothing I can really do about it. And I don't mean to depress you guys on your morning, but that is the fate of this. And so, let me know if you guys are collectors, if you have any memories. I think just having the word collection in the title might bring a person or two. But otherwise, yeah, that's my story with collecting. And then, yeah, I think that's going to be it. I hope you guys have a good rest of your day. And with that, I leave you.